So my next question really I did want to touch on sexual harassment in the workplace. Something that I'm seeing as an investigator into sexual harassment more and more is that what will be tolerated by the generation that has come after me is just completely different to what my generation or older would actually put up with in the workplace. Do you think we're now coming into an era of equal expectations? And if so, how should people in the workplace, given this change in environment, now actively speak up if they are experiencing something or are an active bystander to someone experiencing sexual harassment in the workplace?
I'm going to use a really inappropriate term, but I think it's an all-hands approach. As my husband says, he works at Salesforce and they're always talking about all hands on deck. So I actually think an all-hands approach is required. And what I mean by that is I'm just going to tell you, I'm a bit of a storyteller. I'm just going to tell you two stories. My 17-year-old Max has an 18-year-old girlfriend, Hannah. She's a tiny little Japanese girl, delightful young lady. She turned 18 about 2 weekends ago and decided that she was big enough and old enough to go to a nightclub now. And seriously, she's about this tall. So she went to a nightclub, and at 4 a.m. Julian and I got a text, can Hannah come around? Which of course we slept completely through. So when we woke up in the morning, we found out that our 17-year-old girlfriend had turned up in the middle of the night. And the reason why she had turned up in the middle of the night was because she'd gone to a nightclub. Heavens knows where she'd gone, but she'd ended up with a rather large lesbian woman, had straddled her, had grabbed her around the neck and had choked her. Perhaps that's a form of affection, I don't know. But anyway, the reason why I'm telling that story is because her girlfriends had left her. And from my perspective, 30 years ago, I grew up in Western Australia when the Kringoudis serial killings were happening, so no girls ever left their girlfriends. So I've grown up with that mentality. So when I woke up this morning and found Hannah in the kitchen with all the big swollen eyes, and I said to her, what happened? And she told me the story. My response to her was twofold. One, dump your girlfriends because they suck. And secondly, I think you might need to go and do a self-defense course because that's what I did when I was a young girl. And Hannah sort of rolled her eyes, which is not uncommon. But leaving that story aside, I wanted to just flip on to a second story, if I may. I'm going to have to remind myself what the second story is, that's right. So I have this beautiful coaching client who is a young lawyer, and she was really troubled when she and I spoke one day because there had been a racist comment made in her workplace. I am getting back to your question, by the way. There had been a racist comment made in the workplace, and she had walked past it. And she and I had a coaching session that day, and I said, what's on your mind? And this really troubled her that she had walked past this comment. And I said, okay, well, let's role play what you would have said if you hadn't have walked past it. And so when she had a chance to think about it, she then said some gorgeous stuff. And I said, well, what's stopping you from going up to this person in a quiet moment and just repeating that to them? And so the next time we had a coaching session, she said to me, I'm so pleased you gave me that advice because I did. I went up to this person and I told them the impact that it had, and they were very regretful and said that they didn't realise the impact, which is appalling. I'm not going to repeat what this person said because it was so dreadful. But I guess the point I'm trying to make here is that it's a collaborative effort that I believe we all have to make. So that's why I made the reference earlier on to it's an all-hands approach. There are going to be some people in the workplace that if something inappropriate happens to them, they're not going to be able to speak up because they don't have the strength in themselves. But if you do and you see it, I really do feel it is incumbent upon you to go and help that person and to be the voice that they need. Similarly, if you're the voice, it's having the guts to actually be the voice. Now, as you may have gathered, I'm not one that stands back. I will say something. And in one of my previous jobs, I actually heavily advocated for men to have parental leave rights, and it was opposed by the senior management team, who were all men, and I think it was because they didn't want to actually have to say to their wives, I'm not taking parental leave even though I'm allowed to do so. But I found it pretty surprising that I was the voice that was advocating for them. So to answer your question, do I think that the situation has changed? I actually don't think that women themselves, because predominantly what happened to women, I don't think the women themselves have changed. I don't think they have got greater voices. I think they've certainly got a greater global awareness because they just grow up so much faster these days. But there's still going to be the introverts in us, and there are still going to be the extroverts, and there's still going to be people with voices and with power. So that's why I say it's an all-hands approach, and we need to help each other. That's why I'm passionate about helping each other and standing up. I'm one of these people that has, 4 words that guide every principle, and 2 of my words are fairness and equality. If I don't see somebody being treated fair, or if I don't see somebody being treated equally, I will go out of my way at my own cost, and it has cost me over my career, over the years. I will go out of my way to help that person and to advocate for them, because I feel it's incumbent upon me, because clearly I have a voice that doesn't shut up after a while. That is the end of my answer to a ground. That is now time for it.
Just to add to that, 100%, couldn't have said that any better myself. I think that this current generation, like you said, that are actually the next generation, it's been researched that they are actually far smarter than we are, far more socially aware, far less likely to take drugs. They're basically everything that we're not. Not really, but they're definitely more aware, I think, than we ever were. I grew up in a country town, so it was very different to being in the city, and definitely when I moved, I was exposed to a whole lot of things that I'd never seen before. Definitely this was, that was part of it. Again, just to add to what you said, I think also us also leading by example, standing up for people, especially when it comes to when others are watching on. How can we be the example so that those that maybe aren't confident, aren't able to speak out, don't feel like they can at least be inspired, and you can start to have those conversations. But never underestimate your role in that either, because I really do think that it's up to us collectively, like I said, it's up to all of us to be able to do that together. And you're right, women aren't any different. But I just do think that they're definitely more aware. And I actually think to a degree, if we're saying that teenagers or this next generation are more socially aware generally, I think we're doing something right. I actually do think we're doing something right, and it's about the conversation.